Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Tom Stewart here, Smart Business Moves. Got my partner here. Liz is back in the saddle. Hey, Liz, how are you?
Hey, y'all. I'm well, Tom. Oh, look, I see Leslie's already here, too.
Hey, Leslie. We missed you last week, Liz, but, RJ filled in, did a noble job, had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
He says that, he could see this as being a regular gig for him. So I don't know if we need to add an extra guest or...
We might have to figure something out then, because he's pretty amazing. You don't want to pass up on the good stuff. Speaking of amazing, we also have Dave here that I'm pretty excited to have on the show today.
Hi, Dave. How are you today?
I am doing great, Tom, and thank you for that, Liz. It's great to be with you both.
Yeah, super excited. Okay, Dave? Tom, you have to give a quick intro of who Dave is.
Dave is a principal in a group called the DiJulius Group, and he'll give you a lot more details. I can tell you that they do consulting work in the area of customer service with some of the largest and most successful companies in the world, like publicly traded companies that, you have Fortune 500 companies, really large companies. So they've got some pretty awesome stuff to be able to build a portfolio of clients that look like that. And I think Ernie Hartong actually has some connections with you guys, and Ernie pulled a lot of strings. I mean, this is, just really appreciate you being here, Dave. I know that you don't, fill your calendar up as a rule with, typically you're dealing with much larger clients, and we're excited and honored.
Well, I'm excited to be here. I'm thrilled to be here. We love Ernie. We've been working with Ernie for such a long time. Both John and I, John's my boss, John DiJulius, the author who started our organization. Both he and I have spoken at different conferences that Ernie's been a part of, and it's been a great partnership. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Real quickly before we jump in, we'll just talk about what we're doing here the rest of the week. Dave is with us today. We're going to be talking about quality in a COVID-19 world, and we'll probably go a lot of different directions with that. So you guys start getting your questions together, because this is going to be a rare opportunity. Tomorrow, John Braun is going to be with us. He does consulting primarily within the carpet cleaning industry. I've met him before. He's out in Colorado, and he's going to be talking about communicating effectively with clients. Lisa Winter, who basically is the product rep for Protein Vacuums on the residential side, is going to be with us Wednesday. And Protein certainly has a strong pedigree in the area of cleaning for health, and she's going to have some useful information that will again be particularly applicable in a COVID-19 world. And Thursday is on the spot. We have our secret guest all lined up for Thursday. Liz, do we have any hints as to who our guest might be?
Well, I have a really good hint, but it's also not really great. It sort of depends on how much you pay attention to our show. So if you pay attention to our show, then you will understand this clue a lot better. Everybody likes this person, and that is my big clue.
Charles is holding down the fort in Myrtle Beach. I feel you, Charles. I'm just a little south of you, and buckle down. You guys are going to have some fun tonight.
Okay, Charles, we're keeping our fingers crossed for you. Tom, you too, of course, but Charles, since you're already batting down, right?
We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay here. It's just...
So, hey, Marlo, I see you on there too. Down here.
Dave.
Marlo's not far from y'all.
Yeah, she's a little further inland, though. She's up in Columbia. They might be getting a little bit of
it. Hey, Denise,
Dave,
thanks.
Dave, you want to maybe share a little bit more about DiJulius Group and what you do, and you can jump into your deck whenever it's appropriate.
I'll jump into my slides, and I'll start with a little introduction of myself, who I am, and who we are as an organization. So I've been with the DiJulius Group for 8 years now. but I've been working within this methodology for about 13 or 14. And the reason is, before I joined the organization as a consultant, I had the opportunity to be a client. So I was working at my hometown baseball team, the Cleveland Indians, and we knew that we needed to up our game, so to speak, when it came to customer service, and specifically client retention was a big focus of ours. So we did a lot of research trying to find the right partner to help us with that, because we knew it was a little bit out of our scope. And our search led us to about 12 miles east of the ballpark to the DiJulius Group right here in Cleveland, Ohio. And so I got a chance to work with John and the team as a client for about 5 years, taking the methodology, creating the tools, implementing those tools with the teams that I was overseeing at the Indians. And then about 8 years ago, as I said, I had the chance to jump over to the DiJulius Group. They were expanding. I was personally looking for something new, and it was just a perfect opportunity, a perfect match. So that's my story. And to talk about the DiJulius Group, Tom, to answer your question there, yeah, we work with clients across all industries. We basically say, if you have customers, then we can help you. And so we are a customer experience consulting group. That's what we focus on. We don't focus on sales necessarily or leadership per se, but we get hired by sales companies all the time, and we get hired by leaders all the time, because they know if they're providing the right service, both internally and externally, that the sales will follow, that the proper leadership will follow. So it's been great for me. I love my job. I love working with all sorts of great different organizations in so many different industries. So that's a quick overview of what we do.
And looking at some of your clients, I mean, you've got some names up there that are recognized for providing high levels of customer service. Is that, do you guys, is that, did you guys make that happen?
So, here's a cool thing about my job and our consulting group. Typically, bad companies don't hire us. So really lousy customer service companies don't call us up and say, please come fix us. We get hired by organizations that do a good job, in some cases a great job already, but they know they can't stay still. They know that there's always room to raise the bar. They know that they always need to be evolving. And so that's why we get involved. So some of the logos up here that you see, like Chick-fil-A and Starbucks, we help them create some great tools, but they were already doing great things before us. We brought our methodology in, helped them incorporate that to do even bigger and better things than they already were. So that's typically how it works.
So would you presume that companies who really aren't very good at customer service don't even see that as a competitive advantage, and they don't really, that's not a priority, I guess?
Typically, that's the case, Tom. Typically, what we see is companies make assumptions. They assume that if we hire good people, that they'll go out and they'll provide good service, and we should be all set there. I'm amazed at how many organizations out there don't have what we would refer to as soft skills as part of their training. So they have all the hard skills, the operational things about the job and the training and the onboarding, but very little soft skills. And when I say soft skills, how we're talking to our customers, standard greetings, all those sorts of things that they usually don't exist, and companies assume that they're getting that. And I'm gonna share a couple of slides here that will tell you pretty quickly that that's not a great way to go about your service plan, because very often that can backfire.
Okay.
I did not know that you were a customer before you actually worked there, Dave. I love that dual perspective, because you're on the other side and you have at least some of that pushback that comes from, yes, we want to be exceptional. We absolutely want to do everything. We want to be the best, but so you understand that other side as well. So I'm super excited to hear this from your perspective.
Oh, great. And you're right, Liz. Absolutely. I sat in that seat and asked those questions. How is this going to work with my team? Are they going to buy in this rollout? Are they going to worry that this is going to be something else that might just fall by the wayside? Because that happens in so many organizations where they roll something out and everyone's excited and eventually it goes away. So yeah, I had all those thoughts just like everyone else does. And you're right. I love the fact that I got to sit on both sides of the table because now I feel like I can advocate for those, especially the project leaders, since I was in their shoes.
Yeah, I really see that that's a super valuable position because you really understand that other side. You understand why they're not jumping on everything, why it feels like, yeah, but what about the money? I'm not sure I can afford to do all of this stuff. I mean, I was just talking with somebody recently that was talking about, how important excellent customer service is, but they keep getting pulled back from that idea from the money. The money is like, yeah, but what about so I'm super excited to hear what you have to say today.
Well,
I feel so excited that you're here.
Well, that's awesome. Let me start with this. So a lot of times when we start working with an organization, we ask this question. We say, what's more important to really have a world-class customer experience within your organization? Is it the hiring that you do, or is it the training and the culture that you're bringing those folks into? And so we'll ask that question, and we'll take a couple of hand raises from the audience to get people's opinion. And a lot of people will say, well, they're both important. And we say, you know what, you're absolutely right. They are both very, very important. You need to hire the right folks. You need to know where to find A players. You need to know what worked in the past and use those same systems. But if we were asked to give the slight edge to one over the other, we would give training, onboarding, and culture that slight edge every single time because it's so important. You can hire all the great people in the world, but if your culture doesn't support it, no one's going to last. No one can, right? So that's one of the things that we really focus on when we're working with our consulting clients. It reminds me a little bit of this great quote from Walt Disney that maybe you've heard in the past. We don't put our people in Disney, we put Disney in our people, right? So it's making sure that people have that understanding within them before they're out on Main Street interacting with Disney guests at Disneyland or Disney World. They make sure that they have that in them. And so we actually have a tool that we use for that, and we call it service aptitude. And here's how we define service aptitude. It's a person's ability to recognize opportunities to meet and exceed a customer's expectations, regardless of the circumstances. So I want to break this definition down into three parts because it's kind of important. So first, making sure that our team members know how to meet their customers' expectations. I ask this question all the time when I'm working with clients of ours. Do all of your team members know how to meet expectations? And very often the answer is, well, we can't because we have this limitation or there's this. So, 9 times out of 10 we are, but there's that one every so often that we're not. So in order to really provide a great level of experience to any customer, we have to make sure that we're meeting their expectations, right? We have to meet that basic level. Then the next step in this definition is, are we teaching our folks how to exceed? Do they know what it looks like? And when I say exceed, it doesn't have to be handing out free coupons, handing out free services. It doesn't have to be monetary at all. Do they know how to surprise and delight? Do they know how to go that extra mile? Do they know how to really build rapport and make it a special interaction? And a lot of times, again, going back to what we were talking about in the beginning, Liz, a lot of organizations, they hire people and kind of hope for the best. That's their service strategy, is we're hiring good people and we hope they go out there and do good things. But we need to really paint that picture for them. We need to give them that roadmap of what this looks like. What does it mean to exceed expectations? And what does it mean to meet those expectations? Then the last part of this is regardless of the circumstances. And what that means is making sure they know to do it and how to do it no matter what's going on. Whether we are having a slow Tuesday morning and I have all the time in the world to have a phone conversation with you, or it's a Friday afternoon, we're all trying to get out of here for the weekend and the phone's ringing off the hook. Are we still delivering that great level of service, and do we know how to? So that's how we define service aptitude. And service aptitude is really important because, as most of us know, unfortunately, as consumers, it's usually the most recently hired, least trained folks out there that are working with customers the most in organizations today. So it's really an important thing to be mindful of, especially when you're hiring people. And to touch a little more on the point of why it's dangerous to not have those soft skills in place, and why it's dangerous not to make sure that you're teaching your teams what great service looks like within your organization. Here's why. We get our service aptitude from 3 places. The first place we get our service aptitude is previous life experiences, right? How we grew up, whether you came from a family where you flew first class somewhere on spring break when you were a kid and stayed at a nice resort, or you hopped in the station wagon and you drove a couple of states over and stayed at a motel and went to an amusement park. They're not one's better than the other. They're just different. And that starts to shape our service aptitude. The second place we get our service aptitude, and to me, the scariest place, previous work experiences, right? So if we don't have any soft skill training for our teams, we are relying on the place that they worked last to train them when it comes to service. Think about that for a minute, right? If you're not telling your team, here's how we treat our customers, you're relying on everything they learned everywhere else. And again, we all know as consumers, that may not be that good. And chances are it's not that good. As a matter of fact, we tell our clients all the time that unless you are consistently hiring from companies like Chick-fil-A or like Starbucks or like Ritz-Carlton, where we know they have really good soft skill training in place, you can assume that people you are hiring are going to have low service aptitude. But that's okay, because as the old saying goes, hire for attitude, you can train the aptitude. Service aptitude is just like job function. You can train it. And that's the third place we get it from. It's from our current workplace. It's from us, right? It's if you are a business owner, a business leader, it's on you to make sure you're creating those tools and training your teams on those tools. We always say it's not the employee's responsibility to have high service aptitude. It's the company's responsibility to give it to them.
Yes, I love that. That's great. I also love something that you had on one of your previous slides, that you said that it was their ability to recognize the opportunity, that there's an opportunity there, which really implies that it doesn't really matter if it's good, bad, whatever's going on. There is always an opportunity. I love that too. Yeah, I love this. I like the simplicity of the statements as well.
Good. Yeah, we're not trying to complicate things. I'll tell you something that's kind of funny. John and myself and other members of our team go out and speak at conferences quite often. And it's not unusual at all for us to finish delivering a talk at a conference and for someone to come up and say, that I really enjoyed that, but a lot of what you're talking about is common sense. And our response to that is, you're absolutely right, it is. But the unfortunate thing is not many people are doing it. Common sense isn't always common, as they say. And this is one of those things where it's not. It takes a little bit of work, and it's not always a priority, as Tom brought up before. And if it's not a priority, it can fall by the wayside.
We see that a lot, that it's a whole lot easier to talk about training than it is to do it. Everybody talks about it, but not many people actually do it. Yeah,
for sure.
Or they kind of like, they think it's so easy and it's so obvious that they shouldn't have to, that everybody knows this stuff, that it's so obvious. So that's also, I see as a real sticking point a lot of times.
Yeah. They organizations think that a lot. They think it's common sense, and that gets them in trouble. Yeah.
I love here too that it's not the employee's responsibility to have high service aptitude, but it's ours to give it to them. I love that, because that's something that I say all the time is, listen, it's not their responsibility to get along with you. That's your responsibility. That's on you. Yeah, I love that too.
Yeah, we have to give them tools. And the good news is those tools aren't all that difficult. In fact, I plan on sharing a couple of different tools in our session today that hopefully some people viewing can go back and look at and implement. And they're kind of easy to create. They can actually be fun to create. They could be good team building experiences too, if you wanted to get some of your team members involved to help out with the process. But creating some simple tools just to get you going is not all that difficult. And just one other thing I wanted to share to show the importance of why we focus on this. There was There was a study done by Bain and Company a few years ago, and it still rings true today. And what they did was Bain and Company, which is a great research firm up in Boston, Massachusetts, they went out and they did a bunch of surveys and a lot of interviews. And they started with senior leaders at 300 organizations, mostly CEOs. And so they went to the CEOs and they said, Mr. or Ms. CEO, we have a question for you. What percentage of the time do you feel that you're providing your customers with superior service? And so they got all the answers from the 300 participants. They crunched all the numbers and it came back at 80%. Now, what these leaders did not know was at the same time, Bain had identified 3,000 companies that utilized these organizations. And they asked them the same question. They said, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, what percentage of the time do you feel that you are receiving superior service from these organizations? And when they got the data back and they crunched the numbers, it came back at a very surprising 8%.
Oh,
So
I thought for sure you were going to say 20. Oh, I feel even like that's even worse.
Worse.
Yeah. Yeah. People guess the old 80-20 rule all the time, but it came back at 8%. It's almost as low as it could go, right? But it's a great reminder that no matter what we do, no matter what our industry, no matter what our role is, we are all in the customer perception business. What our customers perceive has to be our reality. So, we can't sit in a room and say, oh, we hire good people and we think they do a good job. We have to make sure that that's the perception, that's being felt. And so that's where a lot of organizations also make a mistake. They don't find out. They don't do any due diligence. They don't ask questions. They don't follow up. Maybe they're doing surveys, but if they get a negative one, maybe they're not doing much after it. So there's just a lot of opportunities out there that unfortunately organizations, again, because it's not a priority, just don't take the time to follow up.
There's a quality model that we use. I think it's called ServQual. And basically it's like you need to understand what your customers are expecting and then do the things where they perceive that their expectations are being met. And that's a definition of quality. Right.
That's perfect. I love that. That's a great one.
Well,
Tom.
we follow a lot of your guys' training because, well, I love your books and they're just ragged from my intense research and using them all the time. And one of the big things that you guys teach that I am a huge advocate of, you have created a lifelong believer in me, is this idea of being proactive and doing the work up front and not waiting to find out what your rating is from your client, knowing what they want, and then from then on doing those things before you have a chance to find out. I'm like, oh, I love this idea of being very proactive.
Yeah, that's a great example, Liz, and I'll share a quick story on that. For those that aren't familiar with our company, we have a sister company here in Cleveland, Ohio. So my boss, John DiJulius, before he started writing the books and before he launched the DiJulius Group, he had started an earlier business with his wife. It's called John Roberts Spa. So it's a high-end salon here in the Cleveland area. There's 5 locations on the east side of Cleveland. And so the reason I give you that background is to just your point, Liz, when you leave the salon and you go up front to pay your bill, the person who's there, our reception desk team members, aren't just there to take your credit card and process your payment and schedule you for your next appointment. That's part of what they do. But their main focus is to dig deep and find out how your experience was. And if your experience did not live up to expectations, if they start to hear cues that things were just okay or didn't live up to the expectations that you had, they are empowered to try and fix it on the spot while you're still within our 4 walls. Before you walk out and go to Yelp or do whatever you're going to do, they know they have the opportunity to get a save, if you will, and still turn that experience into something good. Because we know we all are in this boat. We're going to drop the ball. We have a human element. We're all going to make mistakes. We're not going to be the best every single time. The ball will get dropped somewhere along the line. And how you pick it up and what you do with it is really what sets organizations apart. So we have people where it's their job basically to make sure that the experience lived up to those expectations before you walk out the doors.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, we're getting a couple people. We do have one question here. Oh, yeah,
Sure.
thanks, Tom.
Yeah, it's up on the screen, Dave. It's basically Leslie wants to know, what do you think is the single most important customer service tip?
The single most important tip. Well, I would say it's kind of probably a big picture tip for an organization is to make it part of your strategy, make it part of your focus, right? So a lot of organizations, even small organizations, will have a dashboard and they're watching, profitability, they're watching sales, they're watching customer retention maybe, but they're maybe not watching a service score. So I would make the argument that make whatever service KPIs you have, those key performing indicators, make them as important as your sales and your other metrics that you're probably watching on a regular basis. Make them as important and hold people accountable to them, right? So if a salesperson's getting held to hitting a certain number that they have to hit on a weekly or a monthly basis, a service person should be held to some sort of KPI as well, that they have to have retention or a certain customer satisfaction number. So I think that would be my overall first piece of advice, is to make it as important in your organization as other things already are.
I love that. That sounds so smart to me. It sounds sort of simple, but not easy.
It's not always easy. And one of the reasons it's not always easy, Liz, is because we don't always have the right tools. Sometimes we don't have the right tools in place to track the information we want to track. A lot of times, though, organizations have the information, they're just not using it in the right way, or they're not using it for that purpose. A lot of times when organizations start to do some digging, they have that feedback, they have some of that information, but they're just not using it to its fullest potential. So that's another place to start as well. Take a look at the information you're getting from your customers, or sometimes even from your team members, the feedback, and see if you can be using that in a different way as well that would help your service experience and help measure it.
Okay, that's awesome. It looks like everybody's agreeing that this is great information. Lots of exclamation points. We're seeing.
So I have a tool that I want. Sorry, go ahead, Liz. So I have a tool that I want to share. I'm going to share a couple tools. The first one, and this is one that you could start with your team. The first one is, we call it nevers and always. Maybe you heard of this before. And it's quite simply the things that you as an organization never do or you always do. We find this is a great place for organizations to start when they want to focus on their service and improving their service. So I present this today. There's maybe something you go back and you get a couple of your team members together and you come up with your own list. I'm going to share what that looks like. So we have a couple of rules. Usually we say they should be kind of small, 3 words or less. You'll see that we have some examples where they are a little longer, but try and keep them simple and memorable, not stage specific. And what that means is these are big picture. These are for the entire organization. Doesn't matter if you answer the phone on an inbound sales line, if you're making outbound sales calls, if you're walking into someone's home as part of a cleaning team. Doesn't matter what your role is. They apply to all of those. It doesn't matter if you're the owner. They apply to all of the people in the organization. And then the other thing is, there's no personal interpretation allowed. So everyone understands in the business what these are, what they mean. And again, these could be quite simple, quite basic, but what we're going for here is consistency, right? Making sure that we're delivering a consistent experience across all of our touch points. Again, whether it's phone, whether we're doing chat or answering emails, or actually walking into someone's home to provide a service, we want to make sure that we are providing a consistent experience. So here's just some very generic examples, and I would just encourage you to look at this list, and if there's a couple that resonate with you and your organization, jot them down and feel free to use them. So the first one is never point, always show them. I always give this example. I give the example of supermarkets, because in every town I go to across the U.S., there's always 2 types of supermarkets. There's the one that you walk in and say, hey, could you tell me where the peanut butter is? And they say, yeah, it's in aisle 5, and they point and show you. And then there's the other supermarket where you say, can you tell me where the peanut butter is? And they say, well, let me show you. And they walk you over to aisle 5, and they say, here's our non-fat, here's our regular, here are our other nut butters. Is there anything else I can help you with, right? So that everyone understands that analogy. And here's the thing that I like to share when I say never point. It's not specific just to face-to-face interactions, right? If you are interacting with your customers on the phone, you can point on the phone very easily. If you ever found yourself saying, or someone on your team saying, oh, well, that's on our website, you are pointing to that customer, right? They called for a reason. They picked that communication channel because they wanted to have a follow-up question, a follow-up conversation. And I hear it happen all the time. Oh, we can get that on our website. It's all right there. And that's it, right? So pointing is not just face-to-face. It's across all over organizations. Here's another one. Never say no. This scares some people. The always is focus on what you can do. So we're not saying that the answer is yes, but what we are saying is we can't stop at no. Find a solution. It may not be the best solution. The customer may not even agree to it, but don't stop at no, right? Don't stop at that stop sign. Keep going. Think with your creative juices. What could we do here that might work for that customer? Here's the one that we're. Oh, yes.
I got a question for you, Dave. So like on this say no, focus on what you can do. So would an example of that be a customer asks you, can I get my roof clean? But we're residential cleaning. We clean inside the house. We don't clean a roof. Instead of saying no, what we'd say, well, what I can do is hook you up with our favorite roof cleaning professional in the area. Something like that. Right. Is that an example?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So to take it a step further, Liz, if there are a couple of questions like that your teams are going to get on a regular basis, give them the information, right? So have them prepared to say, oh, well, here's the power wash company that we recommend all the time because we work together and whatever that looks like. If there are some common ones that are going to come up, make sure that your teams know it. Make sure they have that ammo so they can focus on that as opposed to saying no.
Okay. I'm gonna hit you up on that first one too. So in the first question is never point, always show them. Would this be an example of pointing? So if somebody calls up and they're upset about something and we want to tell them that we already told them about this when we signed them up for service. We want to tell them, we want to point out to them that they already signed an agreement saying that they knew this. Would we want to try and stay away from that? And then show them like why it's in their best interest to do it this way, or how would that work?
Yeah, I agree. I think you're on the right track there, Liz. So we wouldn't necessarily go right to the contract and say, well, here's what you signed, right? So we want to learn a little more. We'd want to take it a little deeper. We want to keep it very conversational as opposed to pulling out that essentially that no.
Wrong.
Yeah, here's what you did. Here's why it's your fault, not our fault. And start to tell them why we do it that way, why that's a necessity, why these things happen. And then you can eventually get back to the contract and say, that's why we have it in our contract, right? So instead of saying you sign this, instead you tell them a little bit of a story and say, and that's because of this, that's for your own protection. That's why we put it in the contract that you signed.
I like that. So still getting the message across without pointing and saying, listen, you're wrong. Okay. I love that.
You should be thankful that we have that in the contract.
Sure.
Yeah, I like it. Okay.
So here's another one. Never say no problem. Instead, focus on certainly, my pleasure, absolutely. The reason we advocate against using no problem, and I know it's everywhere, right? But it's a habit that people have. The reason we advocate against saying no problem is because, first of all, it's insinuating that there may have been a problem. And secondly, it's using two negative words back to back, no and problem. And finally, the true definition of this slang use of the English language really comes from the definition of it wasn't an inconvenience on my end to do this for you. But if you think about it, if we're there to serve our customers, if we're on the clock and serving, our convenience shouldn't be the issue, right? We're there to do our job, whatever that is. So that's why we advocate against using no problem, and instead focus on certainly, my pleasure, absolutely. Obviously, fans of Chick-fil-A know that they took my pleasure and built their business around it, right? They practice it, they rehearse it, and they're known for it. We're not saying that you have to do that, but just focus on a word that's a little more purposeful instead of that slang. No problem. One that's not on this list, but is usually a good substitute for no problem is you're welcome, which I feel is kind of an underused choice of words these days, but a lot of times that's the same message you're trying to deliver. So just something to think about getting your teams focused on.
That's great.
Another one I have that I love, cold transfer. So never cold transfer, always warm transfer. So a lot of times when people hear this one, they think of a traditional call center, or you called your bank, your credit card, your cable company, whomever, and the person you talked to couldn't help you. So they sent you off to somebody else and you had to tell your story all over again, right? That's a cold transfer.
I hate that.
Oh, it's awful. A warm transfer is when that person takes all the information they have and they deliver it to that person that you're going to next, so that the person can answer the phone and say, well, Liz, I heard you talked to my coworker and I understand you're having this, and this issue. I'm here to help, right? So they can jump right into it. So the thing about cold transfers and warm transfers, they don't just exist in the call center and phone world. They happen in face-to-face interactions all the time, right? If someone asks to speak to a manager face-to-face, or if you have a team out there working in someone's home and they want to speak to the team lead, right? That team lead comes down from whatever they're doing. Wouldn't it be nice if they were able to do that same thing and not have to hear that information firsthand? But it happens, right? So it's focusing on making sure that we're getting the information out there where it needs to go to give a better experience to that customer.
Okay, so I think I do this too much in my company. So here's an example. Maybe you could help me with this. This is something I might do in my company. Don't judge me, everybody. Okay, so let's say a customer calls and says, hey, today Susie Q was cleaning my house and she broke a picture frame and she didn't tell anybody. And she just left, and she left the picture frame broken, sitting on the floor. So my response might be something like, well, let me get a hold of Susie Q and find out what's going on, and then I'll call you back. Instead of like maybe getting on the phone with Susie Q and the customer and trying to figure out what happened. I feel like now I'm pushing the customer off. I'm like, I'm got to find out what Susie Q has to say. And then I come back with kind of, again, this cold information. I'm like, I don't feel like that's smart.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing too, Liz, in that situation that I would recommend is apologizing that something happened to one of their belongings. We're not admitting faults. We're not saying I apologize that we broke something. I'm sorry that something happened to one of your important belongings. I'll investigate. I will find out whatever that looks like. I will get Susie Q on the phone with you, and we'll investigate this together. However that plays out. But a lot of times, I feel that team members and organizations see an apology as admitting guilt, and it doesn't have to be that case, right? So a lot of times we get defensive, and we just go into defensive mode. We didn't do that, right? So we can still be sorry that something happened. The kids could have come in and acted over as soon as we left. We don't know that yet, but we can still be sorry that something happened that affected them negatively.
Oh, I love that. So I can still say, I'm sorry that happened. Let me help you figure out what happened. Instead of just, no, I'm sure my people wouldn't have done that kind of a thing. I need to check with them to make sure you're not lying. Kind of a deal.
Right.
Which I'm not trying to give that impression, but I know sometimes it can come off that way. So, okay. And I'm thinking that's actually not this cold, warm transfers idea. That's just what popped up for me, but it's probably a little bit than this.
You want to be able to empathize. You want to be able to feel their pain and let them know that you're sad that they're sad. Yeah.
And then that's no judgment on it.
And you bring up a good point, Tom. One of the things that we talk about in our consulting business is how important empathy is, right? Having empathy for that customer, whoever it is, thinking outside of just the service that you're providing at that time, all the things that they may be going through, all the things that they may have going on, and being able to be empathetic for them. Now, I realize that for a lot of people on this call right now, you have team members that are out there working really, really hard, and a lot of times they're going into homes that are way more expensive than where they reside. And how can they have that empathy? So that could be a challenge, right? So we have to focus on things like that to make sure that our teams are feeling that empathy and understand the importance of empathy, because it really is probably the most important emotion when it comes to providing great service.
Is that something, so with the right type of training, you can develop empathy?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we have a tool that we help our clients create. We call it the day in the life of a customer. And some of our clients will actually turn it into a video and they'll make it part of their training. But it's focused on all the things that our customers have going on before we show up, right? So it's not us coming to the rescue and cleaning that house and getting it back to the way it was and making it great, but it's focused on all the things that they have going on, right? The dog had an accident, the kids are running late, kids forgot homework, I had to go drive, whatever all those hectic things are that everyone goes through from time to time, right? It's not fiction. It happens.
Yeah.
It's just a reminder to all of us that these things do happen, no matter how green the grass looks on the other side, these things are happening.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, that is good. I love that idea. You are giving us some good tools today. Thank you so much, Dave. Good.
I'm glad. And there's one other that I want to share. Before I do, here's a look at our nevers and always list. So this is our list here at the DiJulius Group. And one of the things about a nevers and always list is a lot of them transfer across organizations, across industries. So again, if you see some up here that you think makes sense, I didn't cover all of these. I'll share one that might not make sense to everyone. Number 7 on this list: never show frustration publicly. Always be a duck. And what be a duck is referring to is that when we see a duck swimming across a lake, they look so graceful and they're just kind of floating and look so nice. What you don't see is how hard they're working underneath, that they're paddling really, really hard to get where they're going. And that's what that one's referring to. So never let the customer see your frustration. Be a duck. You know, maybe you have to go take someone out back and give them a piece of your mind on your team because they really dropped the ball or whatever that looks like. But make sure you're mindful of it and you're doing it when it's appropriate and not in front of the customer.
Dave, number 5, don't never overshare, always take care of. What is always take care of? What does that mean?
So that's a great question, Tom. So never overshare refers to, we all have this little voice in our head that when something goes wrong and we're interacting with somebody, we want that person to know that it wasn't our fault, right? So we kind of have this tendency as human beings to start throwing other people under the bus, right? So we might say, well, I don't know, dispatch never told me, or our team lead forgot to tell me this, or this. You know, so we start to throw people under the bus on our team or at the office, as opposed to just owning it, right? So taking care of it is just whatever it is, own it. If something went wrong, don't start throwing everything out there that went wrong. Just fix it. Take care of it, own it in the moment, and do it.
Got it.
Yeah, that's good.
At the end of the day, it's us, and we will make it right.
Yes. You know, and the other thing that happens sometimes, right, is something goes wrong and we have this tendency to try and figure out what happened right away, right? But don't do that at the expense of the customer. Fix their problem first. Get them on their way, get them good. Now let's go back and figure out how we stop it from happening again.
Well, you know, and this is very similar to number 8. You know, never make excuses, own it, even if it's not your fault. And I know this is very hard for people to do, even when I'm training people to do this, and I can tell that they really want to. They're like, yes, in theory, I really agree with this idea. It is really hard for some people to own something if it's not their fault. They're like, I know, yes, but then, you know, there's always this big heavy but on the end of it, but it's not my fault. The customer's going to take advantage of me, but they're going to think that I'm not responsible. You know, they're going to get this bad idea. It's like, that's really, I find this to be really hard to get people to embrace. Do you find that, Dave?
And, one thing I would recommend, Liz, is take a look at how your teams are performing together as well, right? So if you have a team that might be doing this, they might have a hard time owning it. See how many times they're getting put in that position, right? So we all have our limits, right? So if there's another team out there that might be dropping the ball and might be setting them up for some failure from time to time, that might be the problem that you have to get to the bottom of to stop that from happening. So it may not be the people that are doing it. They just might not have any other recourse because it's happening to them too often. So one of the things that we do in the consulting business is we focus on teams working together. We focus on those customer handoffs when they go from sales to service, or from service to an escalation, or whatever that looks like. And we look at those handoffs because a lot of times that there are some problems that reside there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes
I love that. I see that could be a source of frustration, could be what's keeping that going on. That makes really good sense for me. Thank you.
Dave,
sure.
We should have carved out a day for this. We've got about 7 more minutes.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? What time is it?
Because this is awesome stuff, but take us where we need to go for the next 7 minutes.
Let me share one more tool that I wanted to bring to your attention. So this is our 10 commandment methodology. We have 10 commandments when we're working with our consulting clients that we kind of lead them through and create some tools so that they can operate better as teams and deliver a better experience to their customers. And I wanted to focus a little bit on number 3, the one that's circled there, non-negotiable standards. Especially today with COVID and everything that's happening, I think it's a good time for you to take a look at your business and check out your non-negotiable standards for no better reason than just making sure that you have consistency, right? We talked about that before. What does that consistency look like? And we work with Starbucks. So one of the things we talk about consistency is that when I buy my coffee here in Cleveland, Ohio, I get the same experience. It tastes the same. It's just as good as if I buy it in Los Angeles. And so what does that look like in your world? So what we mean with non-negotiable standards is we all have things that we do operationally. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is also focus on the experience as well. So let me give you an example. I'm going to use a hotel check-in as an example because most of us have been there at some point in time. So when you go to a hotel, you walk in, the receptionist greets you and says, "Welcome to XYZ." Then they ask for the name on the reservation. They ask to see your driver's license and your form and payment. And then they confirm your room rate and they confirm your date of departure and they hand you your keys and off you go, right? That's typical. Those are all operational. Those are the things that they have to do to get the job done, right? To get you checked in. Now, if we look at a different way of looking at it, what if you checked in and while they were doing that, the receptionist executed the 5 E's, and we refer to the 5 E's as this, and this is something you could potentially work into your teams as well. 5 E's are making eye contact, giving an enthusiastic greet, an ear-to-ear smile, engaging that customer in some form or fashion, and then educating them, right? So in the hotel world, the first 3 are easy. You walk in, I make eye contact, I greet you very nicely, and I give you a big smile. Then engaging is asking the right questions. Are you here for work or pleasure? Do you need to know about any restaurants? What sort of food you like, right? So taking it to that next level, right? So that's one way to take it a step further. What about in that hotel check-in environment? What if they said, "How was your trip in from Cleveland?" Well, how'd they know I came from Cleveland? They already have my driver's license, right? Remember, they took that as part of the operational standard to check me in. They have my town where I originated from. So use that information. A lot of times we have information already in hand that we're not properly using. And then another one that I love is there anything else that I can do for you today? It's such a great way to end any service-related conversation. It's basically saying, I have time for you. You're my biggest concern right now. Is there anything else I can help you with today? So the difference is those are experiential. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do, especially in these days of COVID, take a look to make sure you have enough experiential and build them into your standards, build them into what you do. A lot of organizations have standard operating procedures that they follow at certain stages of an interaction or a sale or whatever that is. Most of them don't have experiential built in. So take an opportunity and look at some of those and try and build in some experiential. Jim Gilmore, who's a great author, has this quote: "Service is what you do, experience is how you do it." Right? So think about how your teams are doing. How are they delivering it? And what does that look like? And what tweaks would you make, right? If they're just going off the operational script, what does that look like versus how can you make that a better experience just by doing some tweaks on the experiential side? So that would be something that I would recommend, because here's the difference between operational and experiential. Operational, we say, is the service portion, right? It's what they have to do to get the job done. The other thing is employees have to execute it in order to get the transaction complete. They have to do it. They don't have a choice. The other thing is everyone else does it too. All your competitors do it because you all have to follow the same operational standards to get the job done. And then typically they're only noticeable when we drop the ball. Then the experiential come in, and they don't necessarily have to be done by your team members to get the job done. I like to give the example of Starbucks. I can go into a Starbucks and get a coffee just the way I like it, and they can hand me the cup and never smile, right? So the experiential would be the missing piece there. They can still get the job done. It can be a wow moment for your customer. And quite honestly, it's the reason why customers return, right? That's what leaves them wanting more and helps build brand evangelists, because they crave that experience that we're delivering. And the last piece is most of our competitors aren't doing it. Most organizations aren't spending the time to focus on it. So it's really an area of opportunity out there. So I would ask you, and I'm going to leave you with this: do an experiential audit on your business and find places where you can build those experiential standards, where you can be unique, engaging, and memorable. And that will help you go a long, long way. So that's all I had as far as slides for today. I'm going to stop my share, and I'm happy to answer any questions in the time we have left.
Well, we're definitely, oh yeah. So Matt Ricketts is asking if you can share your slide deck with us, Dave, and
Sure.
We can put it on. I know I'm furiously taking notes too on this crazy notepad. I've got pages and pages writing, trying. Matt Ricketts is one of our tech guys. He's probably smart enough to be taking pictures over here. But yeah, if we can get that slide deck, would be awesome.
Yes,
great that you
send it.
Yeah.
What we do, Dave, we have cleaning business today. I'll kill two birds with one stone. If you haven't subscribed, email, first name, last name. It's really easy. You get a letter updates on breaking news. We have a resource page here, Dave, that we have all kinds of downloads from Smart Business Moves that our various guests have shared with us. Got a couple of varieties here. If you have like a deck that you want to share, we can just put it up there for upload. Some of our guests are mindful of their SEO, and they take it and put it on their website as a download and give us the link, so you get a backlink to your website. You can do it either way.
Okay, great.
So this information here for us, Dave, is sort of unprecedented event in this, or information in this unprecedented time. So we do need to be thinking of this information in a new way. And that was why I really wanted to have somebody from your group on here. I mean, I was like, what? They're really going to be on the show? Are you kidding me? Oh, it's so amazing. And really, you brought the goods. I mean, that's amazing. I feel like very energized again for my business, because it is scary right now with the COVID, and it's really impacting our businesses. And it has not been easy to figure out, what to do and how to kind of get past all of this. But right now I feel like, oh yes, he gave us some of the stuff. Oh, so this book right here, What's the Secret to World-Class Service? Customer service. That is one of my most often, I'm sure that every single person that's on this call today has heard me recommend that book multiple times. These books are all so great. Oh, I love all these books. I love Secret Service too.
Yeah. Dave, if one were gonna just dive in with any one of these, where would be the best place to start?
So I would say the best book, if you haven't read any of these and you wanted to start, would probably be the one on the bottom, The Customer Service Revolution.
Okay.
That one is really kind of an overview of our consulting business over the last 6 years or so. What's the secret? The book that's red and gray that Liz talked about having all the notes in, that really serves as our textbook. That one goes really, really deep. It's kind of our textbook of our consulting practice. So if you really wanted to take it to a next level, I would get that one as well. But if you wanted to get an overview, get some great ideas that you can take back, I would say definitely start with The Customer Service Revolution.
I think I need to read this one again now for COVID. I think I'm glad that you popped these up here. I probably would not have pulled that one out, but I absolutely think I'm going to pull that up right now too. That's good.
Dropped the links to this Amazon query in the chat.
Oh,
so
thanks, Tom.
click on that and buy them all. This is good.
Yeah,
stuff.
that's awesome.
Really good.
Well, you know what? We were just talking about for our MMA groups what book we were going to do for book club next month in September. Thank you for that, Dave. I got my book. All right. That's perfect.
Well,
yeah.
We are, I guess, a little bit in overtime, but I'm sure everybody will certainly forgive us for that. Dave, just can't thank you enough. This
Thank you so much.
So useful to anybody running a service business, a house cleaning business. I've got notes. You're having your deck. That would be awesome. We've got some books to read. You guys are great.
Yeah, really. You guys really are.
We're happy to help. I'd love to come back anytime too. So if you put one of the books in book club and you want me to jump back on and have another conversation, I'm happy to do it.
Absolutely. Well, you opened yourself up to that. I'm going to hold you to it, Dave.
Everybody's heard it, so we'll take you up on that. Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Liz, thank you for coming back. You had me working last week. It was hard.
I know. I heard how great it was without me, but not holding it against y'all. That's okay.
So you guys take care. John Braun's going to be here tomorrow. We're going to have some good stuff there. We'll see you tomorrow at 5 o'clock Eastern. You guys up north, watch out for the storm. It's coming. Take care. Bye-bye.
Everybody stay safe.